This channel is for educational purposes only. Please do your own due diligence before making any investment decisions. Hi, this is Joe Rabil with Invest Like a Pro. Going to give you a stock market update as of Thursday's close for Friday morning. I'm going to walk through the market conditions, and I want to make sure you understand the sequence of events and how these things play out. So we're going to go through a few of the past few weeks of how the conditions played out in terms of where there were signs that maybe we were getting a pullback. And then we're going to evaluate just how important this decline is in the overall picture. Let's go ahead and get going. Okay, as always, we want to start from the bottom up, but I do want to point something out. So a couple weeks ago, really at the beginning, August 1st, so let's just point out when this was. Well, let me make this a straight line. You see how on August 1st, it was really the second, I think that was the Thursday, both of these were negative at that point. All right, now this was actually neutral, the daily. This wasn't here yet. All right, so these two weren't neutral, they were negative. And what I was pointing out was that we were overbought and we actually had divergence in the RSI 5. Okay, so RSI 5 weekly had gotten overbought into the overbought area and then showed signs of a divergence at the peak. And the sentiment was up at 39%. The difference was 39%, and the bulls were up around 50, I don't know, 7 or 8 or something like that. It was very, very, what I basically said was that we were close enough that I was going to switch it to negative because we were very, very close to a level that is a concerning level, a higher risk level. So we had both of those at the negative point. Now, one of the things I said at that point was that doesn't mean that the market's going to reverse and break down. Okay, I was expecting a pullback towards, essentially get our first pullback towards the 18-week, which we hadn't had in quite some time. So that doesn't mean that it's a reversal pattern when this takes place, especially if we have a decent trend in momentum in the weekly and monthly patterns. But in this case, monthly's neutral. Weekly was pretty bullish and still is, and we'll get into that in a minute. But I wanted to make sure you saw that at the peak, right, we saw that there was a potential for a pullback. Now, that's all it was. I wasn't necessarily thinking that it was something more than that. And actually, I still don't. Now, the second thing that took place is that the volatility on the daily chart switched. Do you see how the volatility started to grow and it got above the moving average, and then the moving average started to rise? And we also got a test of this 18 at the same time. It was right about in here where the moving average actually started to turn up, and this turned to negative from neutral. Okay, actually, it was neutral when it crossed above, and then it turned negative when the moving average started rising. And again, that was around August 8th or 9th or something like that. So at that point, we're looking for more volatility in the market, higher risk. And so what ends up turning into a pullback starts to have a little bit more risk in the short term. But if we look at what's going on the weekly chart, we still haven't really gotten the weekly volatility to grow that significantly. So when I see that, and when I see the underlying momentum condition on the weekly, I tend to believe that this area is going to be support. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to hold it right on the nose. It hasn't even reached it yet, the 18-week. We're going to get into that right now. So let's start out with the monthly chart, though. I want you to understand, like, this is a neutral pattern. We had this long uptrend, huge long uptrend for an extended period of time, where the 18 was essentially rising. It started rising here, and it went a little flat here, and it maybe even flattened out for a month here, but that was not really a big deal. And then it turned down. So this is really the first turn down in this 18-month. Now, it didn't cross over, didn't cross down below the 40, but it was a pretty significant rollover pattern. So I'm less inclined to think this is the start of another big bull trend. I don't think that's the way this wants to play out. It looks to me like, we're forming some kind of a range is my bet. And I would think at some point we're going to come back and check out these two moving averages again. I do think it's encouraging to see the monthly MACD crossing over the signal line. But we don't have that much strength in this move yet. Even though this has made a pretty big move to the upside, we haven't gotten green DI on the monthly chart to get back above 25. So I'm still classifying this as more of a neutral pattern. Yes, it could carry higher. This pullback could lead to another new high in the move, but maybe not to a new high for the market, or maybe make some marginal new high overall. But I'm not expecting this the start of another big bull trend, as I said before. All right, so I know that in the back of my mind, but I don't make any decisions off of this. This is just like my bias. My bias is I think this is going to be a range. Now I go to the key charts, I start with the weekly and then work my way down to the shorter time frames to really, those are the decision makers. Now this I think is the most important chart on the page, and that is we had all this resistance up here. Do you see how, I want to make sure you guys understand why I had blocked this off. Do you see how I created this little resistance zone, and it had been in place since way back here. I put it up. And that is because we made a peak here, and then we made a bottom here, and then we made a peak here, and then we made another peak here. You see what I mean? Like it's a range, and it's not perfect where I put the box, but it's pretty close. I mean, we're gauging a pretty key level at that point. All right, and then we take the lower channel. So we take this trend line here, and then we create a parallel channel line to the upper side. And I actually didn't even do it exact. I probably should have had this a little bit higher like that, and that's really where it ended, right there. So we knew we were in this area. Now there is another thing. I don't like bringing this up, but every now and again I do kind of play with this a little bit. This is a little trick that I learned. So you draw in this, connect these two lows, and then you make it, you clone it. All right, so now I have the exact same slope and time span from this low to this low. All right, now I take that and add that to the high of that last peak before it took off. And then I know the area where I'm expecting essentially, price and time to run out in this move. Okay, you see what I mean? So we actually went beyond it by a few weeks, but I knew once we got to this area, I should be on the lookout. It's almost like you're squaring. It's not only the length of the move, but the timing of the move. Okay, so it's a little trick. You can play with this a little bit. You can see that you can get a move like this and clone it, and then and then compare it. I'll do a couple of these just to show you. You use that. You see how it got pretty close. It overthrew it a little bit, but the timing was pretty good. And then you could also take this one here, clone this, and add this to this bottom there. That bottom right there, and look at how that pretty much did a really good job of calling that. Now, sometimes you get these really long extended bull runs and it's not as useful, but when you got these kind of choppy moves that have big retracements, it can be kind of a helpful little tool. All right, now I don't want you guys going crazy on that. It's not like I don't use that for it's just kind of giving me a ballpark of what to expect. And I knew there was just a lot of resistance up here. All right, so now we've worked our way back down to the 18. So now we have to start thinking the other way. All right, we have to look at how strong is this pullback. Well, right now, I'm kind of okay with the way this is played out. Strong momentum condition here with the ADX. And we've got a low ADX condition on the pullback phase. So let's just focus in on the daily for a second, because this is really the chart that's telling us the strength of the decline phase. All right. Right now, the MACD is straddling the zero line. It hasn't overrun it. I don't consider this overrun. I know it's back. This is below it, but this hasn't gotten below it yet. So we have a reverse divergence pattern, essentially. Let me see if this broke that low. It did break that low. So that's a little concerning that we got confirmation of that. That weakens that pattern. So we never got a buy signal off the reverse divergence. And now I really think that, because I like to use the last swing, right? So we want to compare this and this to this one and this one. And you see how if I do that, we now have confirmation. This made a new low relative to this low. Now, it's not the same degree, but it's not as strong as signal, in my opinion. This is weakened, I think, by taking out this bottom. All right. Now, with that said, we're still right near the zero line, and red has just poked up here. This is the strength of the sellers, and it's just kind of popped up a little bit. It hasn't caused the ADX to make a big move yet. So we can still be of the opinion that this pullback could hold. What I don't like is look at the size of these bars. I'm okay with the size of that first big red bar. And then we had kind of this size bar. It was, I mean, maybe a little bit bigger than I want because it had a big tail and then came down. But this is not shrinking. The size of the decline of these bars is not shrinking. So that's a little troubling. Now, this is only Thursday's number, so we don't have data for Friday. For all I know, this is going to make a low and form of, maybe it comes down and touches and closes up here and has a little bit of a wick at the bottom, right? Maybe some signs of support or buying stepping in. Anything like that is possible. We have to see how Friday plays out. Right now, I'm kind of looking at the daily chart, and I just think the velocity of the decline, the way it's dropping and how fast it's dropping, it's not going to turn on a dime. We don't really have an ABC. Now, I know if you take this, let me explain something. We actually had from the peak, and that wasn't exact, it's right there, and then to this low bar here. So we got really close to the 50% retracement and the 18, which was declining. Okay, so that almost classifies as a 1, 2, 3 to the downside. However, because it does not qualify as a pivot low, okay, this did not close above the low bar. This is right out of my course. If you take my course, you'll understand what I would call a pivot and what's not a pivot. This is just like an up leg, up thrusting kind of single bar, but it doesn't qualify as a pivot low. So I can't draw a trend line here. All right, so that means I can't be looking for some kind of a quick reversal here. I probably need to have a rally up and to come back down and then turn back to the upside. All right, so I just wanted to make sure I pointed that out. Now, finally, when we get to the hourly chart, what I mentioned last week is that we had divergence in ADX. Okay, and then and now what I said, if we get a pop in the ADX, that doesn't necessarily mean the ADX is kicking into gear to the downside again. This could just be a climax pattern. The problem is that we need price to confirm. We need a reversal to kick in, and it needs to kick in here pretty soon, right? We're coming down to the 18-week. We're not quite there, but we could get maybe a little follow through into Friday, get this to pop up a little bit more, and then show some volume and some kind of reversal spike. And that would be a sign that we're going to hold this 18-week potentially, at least for now. I think we don't have enough evidence of a reversal now until the daily shows something kind of, it's going to have to form some kind of a lower high in either a higher low or a lower low, and then turn the corner back to the upside. So it's a little premature to get too aggressive here. Is it getting close? I think it's getting close to an area where we should expect some support, especially after today. It's down pretty good. The NASDAQ was down even more. I think we should be on the lookout for some kind of a retracement in the short term. All right, that's the update for the week. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. Thanks.